Hey everyone, ready to conquer the IELTS speaking test. You know that feeling, right? Butterflies in your stomach, wondering what curveballs the examiner might throw your way.
It can be a little nerve-wracking, but guess what? We're diving into something that might surprise you. We're looking at how the topic of pets can actually be your secret weapon for IELTS success.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I love animals, but how does talking about furry friends translate into a higher IELTS score?
Well, think about it. The IELTS speaking test is designed to assess your ability to communicate effectively in English. And what better way to do that than by talking about something familiar and engaging like pets?
That's true. It's easier to relax and be yourself when you're talking about something you're passionate about.
Exactly. And that natural enthusiasm can really shine through in your answers.
Plus, pretty much everyone has some experience with pets, whether they've owned one themselves or simply encountered them in their daily lives.
Right, it's a universal topic. For this deep dive, we're analyzing an IELTS Prep podcast episode where the hosts use pets as a springboard to teach key IELTS speaking skills.
So it's like a two-for-one deal.
Yeah.
You get to talk about something fun, and you're simultaneously prepping for the IELTS. Sounds like a win-win to me.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into the episode. The hosts, Emma and James, kick things off with the classic question, do you like pets? And not surprisingly, they both answer with a resounding yes.
Who doesn't love a good pet story? It's like an instant icebreaker.
Exactly. And Emma takes it a step further by sharing a delightful anecdote about her cat, Luna. She describes Luna as a mischievous tabby with a penchant for stealing hair ties.
Ooh, I can already picture Luna batting at those hair ties with her little paws.
It's a vivid image, right? And that's the power of personal anecdotes. They add depth and personality to your answers.
It's like showing, not just telling.
Precisely. Instead of simply saying, I like cats, Emma paints a picture of her relationship with Luna, demonstrating her vocabulary and ability to engage the listener.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the answer itself, it's about how you deliver it and the details you choose to include.
Exactly. Now, moving on to the next question. Did you have a pet as a child?
Childhood pet stories. Those are always heartwarming.
And James doesn't disappoint. He reminisces about his golden retriever, Max, highlighting the lessons of responsibility and unconditional love he learned from Max.
Golden Retriever. Classic choice.
Right. It's a relatable experience that many listeners can connect with. But beyond the heartwarming factor, James is also demonstrating his ability to use past tenses effectively and structure his answer in a clear and engaging way.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly simple pet-related questions can actually reveal a lot about your English fluency.
Exactly. It's all about showcasing your skills in a natural and relatable way. Now, the next question requires a bit more thought. Why do some people keep pets?
That's a good one. It's not as straightforward as a simple yes or no.
Right. And James tackles this question with a structured response, outlining 3 key reasons: companionship, stress relief, and the responsibility aspect.
He's covering all the bases. I'm guessing this organized approach is a good strategy for IELTS.
It definitely is. By breaking down his answer into distinct points, James demonstrates his ability to think logically and present his ideas in a coherent manner. It makes it easier for the examiner to follow his train of thought and appreciate the depth of his response.
It's like he's providing a roadmap for his answer. So it's not just about having good ideas, it's about structuring them in a way that's easy to understand and follow.
Absolutely. Structure is key, especially when you're dealing with a complex question. Now let's move on to a question that's particularly relevant to your country or culture. What kinds of pets are popular in your country?
Ooh, this one is interesting. It allows you to showcase some cultural knowledge and maybe even introduce some unique vocabulary.
Exactly. And Emma nails it with a diverse list. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, and even a shout out to the growing popularity of exotic pets like iguanas and snakes.
Iguanas and snakes. Wow, that's a far cry from the typical goldfish.
It is, and notice how she uses vocabulary like low maintenance and exotic to describe different pet types. She's demonstrating her range and ability to choose words that accurately convey her meaning.
So it's not just about using big words, it's about using the right words to paint a clear picture for the listener.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final question in this segment. Do you think it's good for children to grow up with pets?
Now, this is a question that could spark some debate. There are definitely strong opinions on both sides.
And James navigates this potentially tricky territory with grace. He argues that pets teach children valuable lessons about responsibility and empathy, using the concrete example of feeding and walking a pet regularly to support his point.
Ah, the power of examples. It's one thing to make a general statement, but it's another to bring it to life with a specific scenario.
Exactly. It adds weight to your argument and demonstrates your ability to think critically and provide evidence for your claims.
It's like saying, hey, I'm not just talking hypothetically here. I've got real-life examples to back up my point.
Exactly. And that's a powerful strategy for any speaking situation, not just the IELTS.
Now things get really interesting. Emma and James switch gears and dive into some role-play scenarios, which is a great way to simulate the kind of spontaneous conversation you might encounter in the actual IELTS speaking test.
Exactly. Because remember, part 1 of the IELTS speaking test isn't just about answering pre-prepared questions. It's also about showing you can handle a natural back-and-forth conversation.
Right, so it's about thinking on your feet. And the first scenario they tackle is a tricky one: exotic pets. James, playing the role of a teacher, asks Emma if she thinks keeping snakes or lizards as pets is a good idea.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Would you have a simple yes or no answer ready to go?
I think I'd hesitate before jumping to a conclusion because there are so many factors to consider.
And that's exactly what Emma does. Instead of a simple yes or no, she dives into the complexities, saying it depends on the person and whether they have the knowledge, resources, and commitment to properly care for an exotic pet.
So she's acknowledging that it's not a black and white issue.
Right. And she uses phrases like depends on and certain conditions to create space for a more nuanced discussion.
Those phrases are great because they show she's thinking critically and not just giving a knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly. And remember, the examiners are looking for that depth of thought and ability to express yourself thoughtfully. Now, in the next role play scenario, the roles are reversed, and Emma asks James whether pets should be allowed in apartments.
Oh, this one's a classic debate. I've definitely heard strong opinions on both sides of this issue.
And it would be easy to fall into the trap of just saying yes or no, but James, once again, takes a more balanced approach.
So how does he handle it?
Well, he starts by acknowledging that there are valid concerns on both sides. Pet owners want the companionship of their furry friends, while other residents might have allergies or concerns about noise and cleanliness.
It's like he's saying, I hear you, to both sides of the argument.
Exactly. And then, instead of taking a hard stance, he talks about the importance of finding a balance that respects everyone's needs.
I love how he uses the word balance. It suggests a thoughtful and considerate approach to the issue.
It does, and it shows he can see the bigger picture and consider multiple perspectives. This kind of balanced thinking is super valuable, not just for IELTS, but for navigating all sorts of real-life situations.
Okay, so we've seen some great examples of IELTS speaking skills in action during these role-play scenarios. But now let's get to the nitty-gritty, the takeaways. Emma and James wrap up the episode with 5 essential tips for acing, Part 1 of the IELTS speaking test.
Tip number 1 is to answer fully. Don't just give those one-word answers or short, choppy responses.
Right. It's your chance to shine, so don't hold back.
Exactly. Elaborate on your ideas, provide details, and use a variety of vocabulary and grammatical structures to showcase your fluency.
It's like painting a picture with words. The more colors you use, the more vibrant and interesting the picture becomes.
I love that analogy. Now, tip number 2 focuses on vocabulary. And it's not just about using big, fancy words. It's about choosing words that accurately and effectively convey your meaning.
So like using low maintenance instead of easy to care for when describing a pet.
Exactly. Or instead of just saying good, you could say beneficial, advantageous, fantastic, or any other word that more precisely fits the context.
So it's about being intentional with your word choices and showing the examiner that you have a rich vocabulary at your disposal.
Exactly. Tip number 3 is all about organization. Start with a clear main point and then support it with reasons, examples, or anecdotes, just like James did when he talked about why people keep pets.
Structure is key. It helps the listener follow your logic and appreciate the depth of your response.
Absolutely. Now, tip number 4 might seem obvious, but it's often overlooked. Be confident and natural.
It's easy to get caught up in the nerves and forget to just be yourself.
But remember, the examiners want to see the real you, not a robotic version reciting memorized answers. Relax, smile, and let your personality shine through.
It's like having a conversation with a friend. You wouldn't be stiff and formal. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Bring that same energy to the IELTS speaking test.
Exactly. And finally, tip number 5 is the golden rule of language learning. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
And there's so many ways to practice. You can talk to English-speaking friends, watch movies and TV shows, listen to podcasts, and even record yourself speaking to identify areas for improvement.
That's a great point. Recording yourself can be incredibly helpful for identifying any pronunciation or fluency issues you might not even be aware of.
So there you have it. 5 actionable tips for acing Part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. And the best part is, these tips aren't just limited to talking about pets. They can be applied to any topic you might encounter in the IELTS.
Exactly. The principles we've discussed are universal and can help you communicate more effectively in any English-speaking context.
It's funny, isn't it? We started talking about acing the IELTS and somehow ended up discussing iguanas as pets.
Well, it just goes to show that even the most unexpected topics can be valuable for learning.
That's true. But, thinking back to what Emma said about the rising popularity of exotic pets, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Why are these exotic pets becoming more common these days? Is it just a fad, like something people see on social media and think, oh, that's cool, I want one too?
That's a good question. It could be part of it. Social media definitely plays a role in shaping trends. But maybe there's something deeper going on, too.
Like what?
Well, think about how our lifestyles are changing. More and more people are living in cities, in apartments, where they might not have as much contact with nature.
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Maybe exotic pets are a way for people to feel more connected to the natural world, even if it's in a somewhat artificial way.
Right, it could be a way of bringing a bit of the wild into their homes. Or it could be that people are just more aware of the diversity of animal life out there now.
That's true. With documentaries and the internet, we're exposed to so many different species that we might never have even known existed before.
Exactly. And that exposure could spark curiosity and a desire to learn more, which might lead some people to consider owning an exotic pet.
But there's a flip side to that, isn't there?
What do you mean?
Well, as we become more fascinated by these exotic animals, we have to remember that not all of them are suited to life in captivity.
Absolutely. It's a huge responsibility to own any pet, but especially an exotic one. You have to be prepared to provide for their needs, which can be complex and demanding.
And there's also the risk of exploitation, right? I mean, if the demand for exotic pets increases, it could fuel the illegal wildlife trade, which is a huge problem.
You're right. That's why it's so important to be informed and responsible if you're considering getting an exotic pet. Do your research, make sure you're getting your pet from a reputable source, and be prepared to make a long-term commitment to their care.
So while it's exciting to learn about these amazing creatures, we have to approach the idea of owning them with a lot of caution and consideration.
I agree. It's not just about personal enjoyment. It's about ensuring the well-being of these animals and respecting their place in the natural world.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of pets and IELTS speaking success. Who knew that talking about our furry, feathered, and scaled friends could be so insightful?
It's been a fascinating journey. And remember, whether you're prepping for the IELTS or just navigating the complexities of life, clear communication, critical thinking, and a willingness to learn are always valuable assets.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone.